Hello again, Steve Burns back again. Now, I wanted to add another little tips and tricks tutorials, particularly for modeling a table. We're going to model several different types. I'm going to start with this one, but what we're going to do is I'm going to show you different styles of tables to model, and we're going to show you some techniques to model them effectively. Let's start with this one here. Basically a rectangle shape, and if we kind of get in a little bit closer, we notice that the edges are a little bit rounded on the outside. We also have kind of like maybe a 1 inch circumference going all around underneath the table of a 1 inch thick wood, just a lot outlining the perimeter right underneath. And we also have a little bit of a lip on the top of the table, so it comes past the legs, and then the legs are actually placed in individually to attach to the supports that's going around the perimeter of the table here. Right at the legs here, you'll notice that we got a smaller leg going inside it. Since we're not going to animate the legs in this particular instance, we're just going to model the table. We're not going to make the legs two separate pieces. I'll model both out of a single rectangle. All right, so with the single box, we should be able to do the surface of the table, also the inset that in, extrude out the bottom portion that's going to represent the supports for the legs, and then inset it in to make the supports to be like approximately a 1 inch thick. In terms of the numbers, we're just going to eye it in this particular instance, okay? So we wanted to we're just guessing what's underneath that table because we don't have a photo of the table underneath. This is what the client has given us. So we have to use our imagination to make this work. Now, the client has made it clear that we're not going to animate anything. We just want to kind of get it looking like what the photograph here that he has given us, and want to get it to reflect as much as possible. Okay, so let's go to work here. Okay, let's go ahead and bring our cube on in here. So Shift A, go to the mesh, go to cube. The cube's kind of big in there. I'm going to kind of pull back a little bit. Now we're going to go to edit mode. Tab key, go to edit mode. We're going to go ahead and use my transform tool, and that's what's selected right over here on the right hand side. And I want to use the transform tool at this point just so that you guys can get an education as to what's going on visually. So I'm just going to the Z axis. I clicked on the blue cube to reduce it down. Let's go to the top view. Go to the X axis. I'm going to just squish it out. I'm visually doing this. This is not accurate to dimensions at this point. So I just want a visual assessment of what we're going to produce. I'm going to make that top a little thinner. So I'm going to just select the top portion, hit number 3 on your keyboard. That'll put you to face editing mode only. And then you can just bring the face down something like that. So that's going to be the top portion of your table. Now we're going to do the inner portion next. Go to the bottom of the table, hit the I key for inset, and just take your mouse and just scroll it to the left just slightly. I would say right about there. Looks like we've got a nice little overhang. Let's go take a look at the image. Here we go. There's our image, and we can't really see exactly how much is overlapping. We're going to have to eye it once again because this is the image that the client has given us, and this is what we're going to try to use to model all the details in here. So looks pretty good. Let's go on back to Blender and complete the job. It appears that extension that's going to represent the supports for the legs is about double the height of the table. So hitting the E key on the keyboard for extrude, you can see that it's constraining it to its face normals, which in this case is Z axis. I'm going to take it to right about there. I think that's going to work. Okay. Now, as we mentioned, it's probably like a 1 inch perimeter, because it's basically 1 inch wood slots that's supporting the legs. So we're going to replicate that. I'm going to turn it upside down here. I'm going to replicate it by hitting the I key, and we're going to bring it in and make it look like 1 inch thereabouts, and then left click, hit enter. And all we're going to do at this point is hit the E key. Now, I'm going to go to X-ray mode. We're going to go right up here to the top corner to our viewing modes. And currently my standard shading mode is selected. If I go 2 icons to the left and click it to go to X-ray mode, I can see through my box. So now if I hit the number 1 key on the keyboard or the number 3 key on the keyboard, let's hit the number 1 key, and we'll zoom in close, we get to see how far we're going to extrude this down. I want to extrude this just up to the bottom of the bottom section of the top edge of the table. So I'm going to hit the E key on the keyboard, right, and extrude it up. You can see that we're seeing through it, and take it to right about there, and we're done. So if we rotate it around, let's pull it on back, you can see what I've done. Let's turn off the X-ray view. There we go. It's looking pretty good. And just left click anywhere in the interface to deselect. And there's my bottom portion. So at this time, I think it's probably about time to basically bring in our legs. If we take a look at the legs, they're basically complete vertical squares. And I'm going to make one, and then we're going to duplicate that leg so that we can place them in all 4 edges. We're still inside editing mode for the table, all right? So I want to get out of editing mode and go to object mode. So hit the tab key, object mode. Why? Because I want to make a separate object. I don't want the next object to be inside it. Now FYI, if I go to the tab key and go to edit mode and then go to Shift A, you can see I can bring other primitives and other 3D objects within this particular space. But all the editing I will do or additions that I would apply here will only be contained inside this cube layer here. It'll stay inside the cube. That's not what I want to do. I want the legs to be complete independent 3D objects so I can manipulate them independently from the top of the table. Does that make sense? It's called cube. Let's double click the cube. Let's rename this one table top. All right, make it easy. So let's bring in the leg, tab key, object mode. All right, so I want a separate object, Shift A, mesh, and then I'm going to bring this on up to get the cube. And all we want is another cube. Now the cube is huge, right? No big deal. Let's name this leg. All right, I'm going to go to the cube here, and we're going to call it leg. In fact, we'll call it leg 1. All right, go to my X-ray view. That's just use that as much as you can, because it's going to make your life a lot easier. S key for scale, and then just scale it down to kind of match the approximate size of the corners that you're going to use. Now I'm in my transform tool. I'm going to go to the top view, number 7 key on the numeric side of my keyboard, okay? And I'm going to just pull this on over, like so, and pull this right about there. I'm going to get in close, navigate on over, using Shift and Alt, or Shift and Option if you're on the Mac, held down together. Scroll it on in, using the scroll wheel on my mouse, and I'm going to align it so that it just sticks out past the edges. Why? Okay, let me show you. The reason why is because that's what the picture shows, right? So the edges of the legs are slightly outside of that of the supports all the way around. And it's not much. It's just a small little lip. If we kind of get in a little closer, let's see what we've got here. See, it's not much, right? So I want to angle it. I want to resize it and place it appropriately, and then duplicate this on all 4 sections. Now also notice that the edges of the legs are not sharp, right? They're slightly rounded. So we're going to address that as well. So first things first, I'm going to hit the S key once again, resize it as I feel it needs to be, selecting the leg, S key, resize. I think that's going to work just fine there. It's getting closer. I'm going to pull it on up so that the corners of this are matching this diagonal slice on the table. and we're going to keep it just like this. All right, now let's go to our top view or side view or front view. I think that'll work. That's the top of the table up here, so we want to bring this on down like that. I think this will work just fine. Now, at this point, we want to start modeling the leg a little bit more. So let's go to the Tab key, go to Edit Mode. Make sure the Face Editing, number 3 key on your keyboard is selected. And we're going to just push this on down, just like so. And there is your leg. Okay, so again, I'm going to go back and take a look at the photograph just to kind of get an idea how long we want it. And then we're going to pattern our extensions off of that as well. So looking at a photograph again, it appears that the bottom of the leg is probably about half the width, half the length of the top leg. All right, and then we also, and that looks like that. I'm going to eye this once again when we get back in a blender. I think I'm pretty close. I'm going to probably extrude it down a little bit more. All right, we're back in Blender. That looks pretty darn good. I might just bring it down just a little bit more. So I'm targeting or selecting the bottom face. Go to the Z axis, restrict it to right about there. Now let's go ahead and do the bottom section that appears to be inside the top. So what are we going to do? I key for inset, bring it in like so, right? And now what do we do next? We're going to hit E for extrude and extrude it just visually about half of what we've got at the top. So something like this. That's looking pretty good. I think this is going to work. If I notice that that top leg may be a little bit too long, well, what we can do is we can go over to our edge editing mode. So number 2 key for the edges. And then if I go to number 1 key, it's just to show it face on, I can select all these sections here. It'll only select those edges, and I can just move them up like that just to make that top one a little bit not so long. Okay, that looks pretty good. What I like to do next is I want to round this off a little bit along these edges. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to select the edges all the way through and then give it a bevel command. So if I hit number 2 key on the keyboard, and I think I'm going to do something, I'm going to double click that. And what that does is it double clicks the entire loop going all the way down the edge of the leg. I'm going to do that for all of them. So I have to hold down the shift key, double click this edge, right? Visually inspecting it, making sure it's going all the way down, right? Double click this leg, and I'm going to rotate it around and make sure all 4 sides are selected properly, which I believe they are now. Okay. All right, so now all we need is just a slight little rounded curve, just slight, right? I'm going to hit the Control B for bevel. See that right there? It remembered the last amount of edges I put in there. So if I click it, you can see I've got 7 segments. I probably don't need 7. Let's get in a little closer. It looks pretty good with 7, but probably not totally necessary. Let's see if we go down to 6 or 5. Okay, 5 will work. So the fewer amount of polygons we have, the more effective we can animate it. So I'm going to get out of this X-ray mode to inspect it. There it is. Look at that. That looks pretty good. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so we're done modeling the leg. All we need to do is just place it in 4 corners. So go to object mode, get out of the editing mode for the leg. And what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the leg. And it's very, very simple. Shift D will attach the leg to your mouse, your cursor. So wherever you pull your cursor, your object will stay attached to it. If you right click, it'll reset it right back to where it was when we started. All you want to do now is stay in your transform mode so that you can just pull it straight on over. Place it similar to the other one, okay? And I'm going to inspect it very closely. Yep, it looks pretty good. It's right on. And I'm going to look at the lip of the table. And I probably brought it out too far, right? Because we only want it this side. We only want it slightly showing. So pull this on back and it comes right to the edge of that bevel on this side and on both sides. So that looks pretty good. Now that we've got two of them done, we're going to make our life a lot easier, right? I'm going to select them. I'm going to select them both. So make sure my up at the very top is my selection tool. I'm going to go to the box selection. It'll just be easier. And just select those two legs. It'll automatically select them. And now all we have to do is duplicate those, right? So Shift D to duplicate those. It'll attach it to the cursor. But right click, it resets it back. And if we go to our transform tool right here, we can just pull it on over to this side. Okay, and I'm going to pull it around and inspect it and make sure just to the base of the curve is where this is going to sit, right about there. Good. Let's go take a look at the other side. That looks great. Okay, that looks great. So we've got the legs of the table done, basically. Now let's go address the tops of the table. If we take a look at the top of the table, this whole outside is kind of rounded. And the solution for that is pretty easy. And also at the bottom edge of our table that represents the support for the legs, that is also slightly rounded. Okay, we're going to apply a bevel to that as well. So how about if we start with the supports for the legs, okay? Now, take a look over here in my layer view. I've got my leg 1, and then it renamed it leg 001 and leg 1002 and leg 1003, right? We can put all our legs in a group to keep organized. So over here on the right hand side, select your first leg, hold the shift key and select your final leg. It will target all of them, right? Then hit M for man, or move to collection, M for move, and then click new collection and name the new collection legs, right? I misspelled that a little bit, so we want just legs. Now hit the OK button, and you can see the legs are in its own group. So if I just cascade it up, there's a group for legs. If I go to the eyeball to the right, I can turn them all on or all off, or we can, it's a great way to just to stay organized. If I click off anywhere, and it will deselect them, but again, they're in that group, so on and off, on and off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them off, right? So that I can work just on the table now. Looking at the bottom edge of the table, as well as now the sides here on the corners, we don't need to worry about. Why? Because we're never going to see it. The legs are covering up these corners. So all I need to worry about are these outer edges here. Okay, so we need to go into edit mode to do so. Edit menu, and we're going to go to number 2 key on our keyboard right above our letters, and double click that edge, and then it will select the entire edge loop. All right, the entire edge loop. Blender is telling us that all those edges are connected together and they are one big loop. And I would also like to get the inner edge, because if we're going to animate around it or have the camera show underneath it, we're going to show that the interior edges are also slightly curved, right? Or not curved, but rounded. If I double click on those edges, it will double click that inner edge loop. So I have 2 loops selected. So with both loops selected, let's go ahead and bevel them. So Control B for bevel, pull it on out. It remembered my last command, and I believe it should have been 5 segments for the rounded edges. and just give it about that much of a rounded edge. I'm going to left click, and right there, as you can see under the segments in my bevel options box here, it says 5, remembering what I did last time. If I click it off anywhere else to turn it off, there is my nice little rounded edge. Now I want to do the same thing for the table. Now here we want to round it. If we kind of go from the side view, we want to round it outward in this fashion, right? We want to round it in this fashion. So if you want it coming out like this. Bear with me on my drawing skills here. I'm going to round it out like so. Okay. So that is, so you want to, I'm going to get rid of that there. So we want to kind of pull that on out. A simple solution. Okay. Let's select the table. In fact, what I want to do is I want to add another loop, an edge loop right in the dead center of the table. Command or Control R for add loop. I'm going to click it once to commit the loop, and instead of moving the loop, I want it to stay where it is. So I'm going to left click again right about there. All I'm going to do at this point here is hit the S key for scale and scale it outwards to right about there, kind of representing the angle of the curve on my table. Okay, so if I pull this out and look around, you can see that it's angled outward just slightly. Okay. Now with that edge selected, we can bevel it. Control B, pull it out. See? And there's your rounded edge. So I'm going to pull it out right about there. It seems like 5 is acceptable here as well, 5 segments. And I'm going to just left click. Okay. And there it is. So it's you have a slightly little rounded edge. Now we can go further with this, right? By giving this a rounded edge in that fashion, we have another harder edge right along here. We could double click those edges right along there. And again, I just want those edges there. So I'm going to hold the Control key and drag and deselect these other edges there. Or a quick way of doing it, a little more controlled way, is a shift click. I'm going to add that one. Now hold down Control and Shift together, and it will select all the edges in between the two sections that you selected. All right, so I've got that one selected and this one is selected. Let's go back over to here to this side. Hold the Shift key to select that one edge. Shift and Control or Command if you're on a Mac, and select the bottom one, and it will select everything in between it. I'm going to do the same thing here. Shift to add that one to all the rest I've selected already. Shift and Command or Control will select the rest of those. So now I'm going to just kind of eye this edge here. Command B and pull it out a little bit. There we go. We're getting a nice little rounded, and that's looking quite nice. Click it, pull back a little bit, see everything else from a distance. I think that'll work. Okay, there you go. There's your there's your rounded edges. Now, if we go back to our tab view, okay, and we bring back our legs, okay, and we just say to ourselves, oh, the client's going to be happy. That means we're going to get paid, right? So the table's looking pretty accurate, and there's some little bit of details like that we could add in there. For example, if we go back to our photograph and we look closely at the table, let's bring it on over this side. There's two little nodules there. They're little knobs that you push in so that the bottom table will actually inset a little bit, or allow you to inset the bottom half into the top portion. So they're lock knobs there. I guess we can model those as well. Let's do that very quickly. what I'm going to do is show you how to apply it to one, and then you'll be able to get an idea of how to duplicate and apply it to the other side. So I'm going to go to a primitive that I think is going to work best for this job. So Shift A, and again, we're going to be inside our object mode because I want it as a separate object so I can model it and place it independently of everything else, the other two aspects of our table as being the legs and the top. We're going to come right over here, Shift A, Mesh. Let's go over to our UV sphere. That's all we need. Now here's the trick. I don't need all the polygons in this sphere. All I need is probably just a very few. So I'm going to go to edit mode, tab key to edit mode. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my deselect everything. I'm going to make a rectangular selection around the bottom portion of this ring. And I want to make sure that face editing is selected, right? There we go. So all these on the bottom are selected. And all I want really is kind of like this top portion. So that's going to represent our little nubs that's going to be sticking out so we can push them in to inset the other leg. I don't need the rest of these other polygons. So I'm going to use a technique for expanding my selection. And that technique is Control or Command on your keyboard if you're on a Mac, plus key. Control or Command plus, 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 plus. And it selects adjoining adjacent polygons, right? So Control plus again, Control plus, we say that's about as far as we want to go. And I want to delete all these polygons. I don't really need them anymore. So what I'm going to do, hit the X key on the keyboard. And this is the wonderful thing about Blender. It allows you to choose what it is you want to delete. Vertices or edges or faces. Edges only faces, dissolve vertices. You're going to get to use some of these as you go on with the course. But we want to delete all of these faces, and boom, they're gone. Okay, so that means we're saving a lot of memory because we deleted all that extra polygon faces, got rid of them, and all we have is a few faces left, which we conserve. It conserves some memory. All right, so what we'll do is I'm going to hit the A key to select all, S key for scale. We're going to make it small like that, approximately for now. We will bring it down next to our leg, and we'll start to zoom in, put it on over close to the leg. And if we need to, go to our number 3 key. Let's see, I'll bring it this way and go to our X-ray view to help us see what we're doing. Hit the number 1 key, and I think I'm going to bring it closer to this leg, and we'll bring it on out. There we go. Okay. Now, all I'm going to do is rotate this. So a shortcut for rotating. Look at we want to rotate on the Y-axis. Hit the R key for rotate on your keyboard. We want to restrict it to the Y-axis, right? Next, hit the Y key. What is the degrees that we want? We want 90 degrees. 90-degree rotation, 90, boom. Oh, I went in the wrong way, so I'll undo it. I'm going to left click and I will undo it. All right, we want negative 90 degrees. So we'll do it again. R for rotate. Restrict to the Y-axis. Then hit minus 90. There. And then left click. There it is. So I'm going to just push it out about there. And this is too big, of course. So hit the S key. Pull it down a little more like that. I think that works. And pull it on over. There we go. Okay. So, and again, this may be just a little bit too big. If it is, A key on the keyboard, S key, bring it about something like that. I think that works. Okay. All right. So now turn off X-ray view. And we're going to go to object mode, tab key to object mode, and that's a separate object. That's your button. You can come over here instead of sphere, we can call this one button. to keep everything organized. So at this point, all you need to do is duplicate. We had two of them, one on top of the other, right? So if we select this one, Shift D for duplicate, it attaches it to your mouse. Right click to reset it. Go over here to your, let's kind of pull this back a little bit, and you're going to notice that your origin is way up here in the center of the table. Why? Because that's where it started. So we want that origin to be at the center of the knob, right? So to do so, simply right click, go to Set Origin, and do what with the origin? Origin to geometry, and boom. And that's the way you reset your origin for any of your objects when you're in object mode, right? So right click, all right? Always the case. Right click, set origin to your geometry or to the 3D cursor, right? And you have other options as well, but we'll cover those much later on. Okay, there you go. Now, once that's there, I've got two buttons. I got button 1, button 2. Well, it's button and button .001 here, but the second button, and we just simply slide it on down like that, and you've got two buttons. And if you want to, like I showed you before, we can put this into a group or a collection. Select the button, both buttons, holding the Shift key, M for move to new collection, and call it buttons. And click OK. And there we go. We have a button group right there. Great way to keep things organized in Blender. So there you go. So that's one table. In the next video, I'm going to show you a different style of table that I'm going to do, and some workflow techniques to consider. I hope you enjoyed this one.